And we are rolling on November 2nd, 2017 here at UCLA. Don't come any closer. Where the sunshine is not shining. It's an overcast day, so we're kind of sad, aren't we, Sydney? And we're about to hear about Sydney Benjamin. She's going to share with us a film that really moves her. We have a timer. Thank you so much. Okay, rock and roll.
Hi, I'm Sydney.
Hi, Sydney.
We have always been told from the get-go to follow our dreams, face our fears, follow our hearts. But what no one really told us when we were young is that sometimes that comes with sacrifices, and sometimes we have to face hardships to do so. Today, I would like to tell you about a film that really moved me, Good Will Hunting. It first made me feel sympathetic, but then it made me feel sad, but ultimately, it inspired me. A film critic said about Good Will Hunting that it is a fairy tale-like story about a townie whose exceptional talent for mathematics would be his ticket out of Southie if only he didn't feel so guilty about taking advantage of it. And I disagree with this, because I feel that Will Hunting would not be guilty at all for taking advantage of his genius, but he's rather more scared or fearful to do so. So, the first way this movie moved me was that it made me feel sympathetic. During the film, Will Hunting has some trouble with mental health, and he goes to several therapists, and he really thinks that he doesn't have a problem despite his childhood traumas. And this reminded me of my sister. My sister has been serving the Marine Corps for over 15 years now, and has been on 2 tours to Iraq and Afghanistan. And after her second tour, we could tell that she wasn't quite right. Her smile didn't meet her eyes anymore. And we urged her to seek help. But we could tell that it would be hard for her. And this made me feel sympathetic because from the movie, I could see Will's struggle with dealing with therapy, and I could understand my sister's struggle with it as well. And even though I could never be in their positions, at least I could feel sympathy for their struggle with their mental health. But other than sympathy, this movie made me feel sad. The incident in the film is very specific. Will's therapist, Sean, played by Robin Williams, he said about his struggle with his wife's cancer. Specifically, he said visiting hours didn't apply to him. And this made me feel sad because it reminded me of my own struggle with my mom's health issues. My mother has a hyperactive immune system. Sometimes she would wake up covered in hives, the next she would wake up with no sense of taste. But she has also had an undiagnosed colon disease, which culminated last spring when she was diagnosed with cancer. And the quote from Robin Williams reminded me of that because I spent a good last portion of my senior year in the hospital doing my homework by her bedside. And I remember before she went into surgery to remove it, I drew a heart on her palm and I held her hand, and yeah, so that's why this movie made me feel sad. But this movie ultimately inspired me. And the last part in the movie is where Will takes a leap of faith and goes and sees about a girl who moved to Stanford for med school. The first time he ever left South Boston, the only home he's ever known. And this reminded me of my own struggle with going away for college. And the decision was right around the time of my mom's diagnosis. So it was very hard for me to make this decision to go away from home, from her, from my family. But I remember having a very specific conversation with her. She said, I want you to follow your heart, I want you to do what's right, and no matter what, I'm going to support you because everything's going to be fine and all our family's here and it'll be okay. And that's what inspired me to just take this leap of faith and come here, and that's why this movie made me feel inspired. There should be no doubt in this room that Good Will Hunting moved me. It made me feel sympathetic for my sister's mental health. It made me feel sad for my own dealings with my mother's health issues, and it ultimately inspired me to take this leap of faith to come to UCLA. We have been told to face our fears, follow our dreams, and taking that leap of faith is sometimes the hardest thing that we can do, but ultimately it'll pay off. Thank you.
Thank you. Time?
4:42.
4:42. All right, which side are we starting? Over there last time? Oh, you Sydney, you started last time? Okay. All right, well, let's go over here.
Hi, my name is Brianna.
Hi, Brianna.
I think the speech was really good, and I could really feel like when you were speaking, I could feel that you were sensing a lot, and you were very personal. I thought it was like very brave of you to share your experiences.
Thank you.
Yes. Great felt sensing, yes. Yes. Improvement?
Hello, Roberto.
Hi, Roberta.
I thought overall the speech was very good and not many mistakes. I honestly thought it was pretty good, and I really like how you shared your personal statements. I really good feel.
Okay, Sydney. Yes, this was a very good speech. And I admire your courage for sharing a very difficult part of your life and walking the razor's edge as you did it. Have I talked about the razor's edge in here?
Yes.
Yeah. You noticed that she was about to fall off the razor's edge a few times, but she kept it going. That's what you have to do when you're felt sensing and you find yourself kind of tearing up or welling up too much. You just keep it going, and it's just the right balance. You started with an observation which I thought was a very important and good one, which is, and very pertinent to your own life, which is, you know, this cliche, follow your dreams and follow your heart, and you know, but as you point out, sometimes to do this, it takes a toll, and it's not always easy. And in your case, you know, with your mother at home sick, you felt in a way that you needed to remain home to be support for her. And so that became very clear, and that was, and you had a really excellent tie back to that intro, and that was excellent. Good Will Hunting, what a fabulous movie. My Lord. Everyone was so good in it. Robin Williams, too. Sympathy, sadness, and inspired you. On your quote, I wish you had said that it was from the Village Voice, but it was okay that you didn't. And I like the way you disagreed with the quote. And you,
I disagreed with.
yeah, and that was good. I finally had somebody that disagreed with the quote, and you articulated why. And it was a good disagreement, so I liked that. On your main body, sympathetic, yes. I felt your angst and your helplessness, and yet how sympathetic you felt that your sister, which she probably is suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder of some level. I had a TA that did 2 tours of duty in Iraq, and he had some problems too that we had to work through, but it's not easy, you know. And but I felt your sympathy, and it was a well-told story with just the right amount of information to help us understand how you felt sympathetic toward your sister. You notice how well she pivoted. Thank you. Besides sympathetic, I felt sad. Thank you for making your narrative come out. Great pivot. Unsad, yes. You talked about your mom's significant health issues, and a great story of drawing the heart on her hand, and that was really excellent. And you really walked the razor's edge nicely as you told us how she went into surgery and battled all of her problems. That was really your strongest and best felt sensing. So thank you for that, and thank you for having the courage to trust us to share that with us. That was excellent. On the third way, you felt inspired. You talked about him wanting to leave South Boston, and you gave us the parallel about whether you should leave and go away to college or not. And you pointed out that your twin sister was staying home for college, so there's someone there. And your mother, sort of sensing your dilemma, said, you know, go live your life and follow your dream. And she sort of helped you get over your sense of guilt and your sense of not being there and giving it up to, you know, sit around, you know, kind of thing. And so that was a very beautifully told story. And yeah, it was well done, and you returned to the emotion of why you felt inspired by that whole exchange, and that was excellent. I like the way that you combined the summary and the conclusion by first saying, well, there should be no doubt the film moved me, and then you notice she gave a very detailed summary. It wasn't just the three emotions, but she said, my mother's illness struggle, and sad, my mother's health problem, and she told us what the incidents were that helped us refresh and remember it and have a flashback of her emotions, which I thought really enhanced the speech. Your canais, to move 3 times for each emotion, to speak fluently, to make better eye contact with your audience. How did it go?
Well, the first speech I didn't move at all, so
movement here was a success.
Yeah, I felt like I did better eye contact because I moved. And then I don't know if I speak that fluently. I kind of just like blacked it out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I remember saying quite a few times, but.
All right.
Yeah.
The solution to that is, you know, the hand raising with a friend that will listen to you if you feel that it's a significant problem. For some people that I've talked to about with it's a significant problem. But yeah, really excellent job, because the most important thing that you did was you did what I said the purpose of the speech was. It was to learn to make a strong emotional connection with your audience, and you did that. And that you did with flying colors. Just as I said in the next speech, be authentic above all else. Everything else can fall away if you're authentic. Okay? So, very nice job, Sydney 2. Sydney 2, yeah, Sydney 2.
I guess I'm switching on this.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hi. Hi. How are we doing on time? Yeah, we got some time. Yeah, good. Okay, Laura, rock and roll. Ooh, you're a different height. Can you come a step forward, please? Yes, very good. And a step that way. Yeah, very good. Okay, Laura, stands before you, looking around the room, making sure all phones are away, computers are closed, all eyeballs are upon you. Finding friendly eyes near the front and the center. Say your name. Feel the love. Start your speech.
Hi, I'm Laura.
Hi, Laura.
So I don't know about you guys, but I personally don't have any personal experience with teenage pregnancy. So it's a little surprising that it's probably a little surprising that one of my favorite movies is a movie about teenage pregnancy. It's a movie called Juno, and it's about a 17-year-old girl who finds out that she is pregnant, and it talks about the struggles that she has to deal with along with that. This movie made me feel three emotions. It made me feel nostalgia, it made me feel discouraged, and it made me feel optimistic. Andrew Mail of the Empire magazine, which is a film review magazine, really enjoyed this movie. He stated that it was a coming-of-age movie that was sweet-centered, warm-hearted, and sharp-edged, and that it always was a little bit smarter than you would actually think that it was. And I agree with this quote because this movie is not just about a teenage pregnancy; it's more in-depth than that. It also talks about just growing up and the struggles of having to deal with something that is way beyond your maturity level. So the first emotion that this movie made me feel was nostalgia. The scene in the movie that made me feel nostalgic was when Juno was over at the home of the parents who were going to adopt her baby, and she found the music room of the dad, and she and the dad were just in the music room, playing with his guitars, and the dad was talking about how he used to be in a band, and it made me feel nostalgic because I remembered when I was in 7th grade and I just started guitar class in middle school. And I had loved music up to then, but just like actually playing an instrument and learning it made me fall in love with music even more, and it made me want to like be in a band when I grew up. So the scene where the dad is talking about his old days in a band made me nostalgic about how I felt when I was younger and I wanted to be in a band. The second emotion that this made me feel was discouraged. I felt discouraged in the scene where Juno was again over at the home of the parents who were going to adopt her child. But this time the scene was different. The parents were fighting, and they actually eventually split up in that scene. And Juno was heartbroken in the scene because she had already gone through witnessing her parents' divorce, and she hated seeing it again, and hated the fact that her baby wasn't going to be in the perfect family that she wanted it to be in. And after that, she left the house and she drove home, but she was just so emotionally distraught that she had to pull over on the side of the road and cry and just break down. And this reminded me of just in general how my parents would also fight at home. And the scene where Juno is pulled over on the side of the road triggered a memory of when I was younger and my parents were fighting in the car. We were driving back home at night from someplace, and they were arguing, and then a cop actually had to come and pull us over just to see if everything was okay. And my parents lied and said that everything was okay, and we went back home. So this made me feel discouraged because it kind of like validated the fact, or some of the thoughts that I had in my mind about love and marriage and how like it doesn't always work out. So it just made me feel a bit discouraged about that even more. But ultimately, this film made me feel optimistic. It made me feel optimistic because at the end of the movie, the adopting mom decides that she will continue to raise the child by herself, and Juno was very happy with that decision. And this reminded me of when I was younger, and I really loved to read, really loved to write, but I didn't really know how to write really well. So I taught myself how to write. I taught myself how to write proper grammar and how to write stories based on just like reading books about it. And it just reminded me that I could do things by myself without like needing necessarily anyone else, so that even though I do have this belief that love and marriage don't always work out perfectly in the end, I could still like have a successful family by myself without necessarily needing the help of like a man or anything like that, traditional marriage. So in conclusion, this story made me feel three ways. It made me feel nostalgic because it reminded me of when I was in 7th grade guitar class. It made me feel discouraged because it reminded me that love and marriage don't always work out. But it also made me feel optimistic because even if I still believe that, I can still be happy with that thought in mind. So in conclusion, there should be no doubt in my mind that this movie moved me.
Tie back.
So even though at the surface this movie seems that it is about teenage pregnancy, at its core it is about growing up. And I think that's something we all can identify with. We can all identify with the struggles of it. And this movie proves that we all have these struggles, but in the end it can be overcome.
Thank you. Okay,
All right. Well, hello, I'm Matthew.
Hi, Matthew.
I liked your speech a lot. The thing I noticed is you said a lot.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
And the thing is you're a very confident speaker, I found, but some of your hand motions and the way you walked showed that you didn't feel confident, but actually you came across as very confident. I didn't see that. I thought you would. Yeah, so if you match your body language with how you talk, which is pretty confident, I think you'd be really good. So.
Okay.
It's a great point, Matthew. Real loud, Iris.
Hi,
The speech class.
He pointed out, like,
What? What, are you sick?
so I was gonna say, you heard me, right? Okay.
I didn't hear you.
So he talked about how she was saying, and like her hand gestures were a little timid.
Yeah.
So she was going to say,
Okay, thank you. Well, I really liked the film you chose. I really liked the film you chose and the way you were honest about saying I've never been pregnant. That was great. You know, sort of set the tone right there in the beginning, and you tied back to that. So that was, we knew we weren't going to get any sad story about anything coming down the pike, so that was a relief, I guess. I would say that I'd like to see more vocal variety, in just an overarching way, and to slow down a little on your emotional part. What was the time, by the way?
It's 4, actually it was 5:01. Yeah.
5:01. Yeah, I'd like to see you slow down, edit some of the scene summaries down, and spend a little more time on your emotions, and slow down on those. On your nostalgic, reminded you of the 7th grade. You wanted to be in a band. It wasn't a strong emotional connection I got from that, but it was okay. It's a minor thing, but the stuff on your coat was dangling, and your straps were dangling, a little bit distracting. So I would just say, lose the coat next time. I thought your best one was discouraged about your parents arguing. A lot of people have this. This is shared a lot in my class. They go, I'm never getting married. My parents are an example of, oh my God. If my parents are a model of marriage, I ain't doing it. Because they're miserable, and they argue all the time, and blah, blah, blah. And you told a great story of the cops pulling you over, and they had to lie, and this reminded you of how cynical you've become about marriage and love. You're optimistic because I guess you can get artificial insemination and raise someone on your own, and more power to you, but I think it takes a village, and I think it takes a bunch of people to raise a healthy boy or girl, but that's just my opinion. What do I know? Your summary, conclusion, and tieback were all fine. Your goal, your canais, control your anxiety. Don't rush through your speech. Well, have stronger body movement and gestures. How'd that go?
I think the first point was the only one that I achieved. I definitely felt less anxious than last time, but I do feel that I started to speed up and rate during my speech, and also apparently my hand gestures weren't very reflective of my confidence.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. You got the job done. Do we have time for one more? No. Okay, our work is done. Return with honor.
We're starting the PC speeches.
We're starting the PC speeches on Tuesday with the, is it B's? Where it says in the syllabus.
Yeah, I was just gonna say if we haven't gone for the film speech, you know, there's like a substantial.
How many film speeches are left? 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll have you at the end, and we'll do a few of you at the end of the of Tuesday. Yeah, we'll have a couple film speeches at the end each day.
We still don't have to come in for the final, right? Like, because you said not to, so.
No, we're not meeting during
Okay.
finals week. So plan your plane tickets home. There is no final during finals week.
So around what time do you think we'll be doing our study buddy speeches?
I'm not sure. I think I may have you just turn in the outline of it
Okay,
for credit
great,
because we're running behind. Yeah.
great. Thank you. Have
You're
a good
welcome.
weekend.
Thank you. Hi.
I went to the last extra